Welcome, everyone, to the Between Two Wheels podcast, episode 298. We are doing stage 10, Vulcania to Issoire, 167.2 kilometers. And I'm broadcasting from the office. Things just get crazy today. But we're going to talk about Jorgensen got taken down by Israel Cycling, or Israel Premier Tech. Now, Premier Tech, did they get taken down by someone else, kind of in a tit for tat? Find out.
Massive number of people have been upgrading. Yes,
there you go. You see the graceful limb that you were talking about before.
The race we've got yet again, and a victor then goes victory to an American, Andy Hampson.
The felt it go by. He looks at the Colombian rider. How are you doing?
Straight past Santiago Patero, and he's coming up to Pantani.
Armstrong is sitting in the last few hundred meters as we come towards the finish of this monumental stage. And
as we start to approach the line now, Pantani grits his teeth and accelerates and over the line.
Is going now to win stage number 15. Sepp an emotional finish from Durango in the USA. Sepp wins.
And we didn't have a Sepp Kuss win today, but it was pretty exciting. It was a weird stage. We're going to get to that. What did I say? 220, Vulcania, Issoire, 167.2 kilometers. Welcome, everybody. Glad to be here. Today's been a bit of a crazy day. Victor's already in here. He says, Between Two Wheels is live. Yes. Mark says, fresh off Alviso win and ready for the BT live. Mark, look, and we're only talking Tour de France stuff here. So congrats on your parking lot win. Is it a parking lot win? We've talked about this one before. By the way, Victor, I got your mug. Thank you. If people want to send me fan mail, please do. Doing this from the office today. Mark Tucker, a legend in his own right. Thanks for joining us today. We're going to be just doing it real quick. I've got a lot of things going on. I'm going to go do a ride tonight. So that's kind of what's in my thing. That's why I'm doing this earlier. I've been just playing 7 o'clock p.m. Pacific time, everybody. That's when we'll continue to do these. That's when the best shot is. But I'm back at the office. I thought I'd just do this real quick. Normally, I don't even wear a tie to work, but I had to go to court. So that's cheers. Says yes. And Mark Tucker with the laughy faces because he is a legend. He is. Or are you talking about the parking lot crit that I was mocking? Okay, let's go right to the stuff today. And by the way, what my buddy Brian Zimney said, hey, Chris Horner is kind of backtracking a little bit on his analysis of the stage 6. And I watched it. I don't think he's necessarily backtracking. Look, I think the analysis, I have one of my good friends watches this and listens to this podcast, and his whole thing is like, look, I just preferentially into cycling. I enjoy Phil and Paul because they don't necessarily give me tactics. They don't necessarily give me, they give him a little bit, and he enjoys it. It's perfectly fine. I think that's good. Once you get into it a little bit deeper, like we do, and I really enjoy the tactical analysis of what happens. So for me, I love to hear the people fighting about what should have happened, what shouldn't have happened. And to me, Chris Horner is one of the best out there. I believe that when I raced against him, I believe that when he was still racing in the World Tour. And I think it shows. Now, you may not always believe what he said, but he does have ways of saying this is the kind of things you do. And his mind does work maybe a little bit differently. With that in mind today, I don't know what was necessarily happening. I'll be interested to see what he says. But early on here, you had Vingegaard, you had Pogacar already taken off. Here's the stage, kind of going southward, I guess, a little bit east still as well. Lumpy day, and they came out with a climb right away. There's a 3, 3, 2, 3, and a 3. I had said early on, I said, hey, what's his name? Nielsen Palace, just don't try getting away in the next few days. Wait till some of the bigger ones. We'll talk about 12 maybe, where it's got some bigger ones to begin with. You can pick up some bigger points, let these little threes go. And he did. He didn't get in there, but there was everyone and their dog was moving up the road. They were all trying to get up in the break. The break took a while to establish. You even had UAE and Vingegaard making moves up the front. You had this little situation here where, let's see, I've almost missed it, where Adam Yates almost takes out Sepp Kuss on the front. David Gaudu gets dropped at one point early on. This reminded me of, maybe Mark could attest to this, up by Baker City. And I know there's mountains up there, but kind of up there where I grew up, even a little bit more north, where it's wide open, it's hilly. You've got wheat fields, gorgeous area, just different like viewing, and no trees. So it was a super hot day out there today. And then they don't really get any shade. And it was somewhat of a brutal ride for that point. Look, 120 kilometers into the stage, or left to go, 40K or so. The whole thing is kind of just weird. Look, the field's all breaking up. The field's all stretched out. It's just breaks here and there. And then they do finally get a group established up the road. Pello Bilbao, Ben O'Connor, Tejada, Alaphilippe, Skilmos is in there. Who else do we have in here? Did they show us the whole bit? Maybe they didn't show us. Anyway, you had Nils, Chris Nils, you know what, Tyler? Instead of just doing all this, let's just go for Chris Newlands, Esteban Chavez, Antonio Pedrero, Kwiatkowski was in there, Warren Barguil, Julian Alaphilippe, Jesper Stuyven, or is that's the break that comes in there? So that's kind of your big moves that you have on the day, and they're working somewhat good together. They're doing what they needed to be doing. But then here, 47K to go. It's a weird aspect. Now, up the road, you do have Bilbao. He's kind of a threat to the 7th and 8th places in there, 6 places. Let's actually take a look here, because he moved up 6 places today. So he was down here. Yeah, he was threatening Pidcock, Yates, and David Gaudu and those guys. And then so he's up in the break, and they have 2-3 minutes here. You can see with 47K to go, they had 2:24. So it's interesting to see what teams are going to help out. Now, Jumbo's kind of there. They're kind of somewhat okay. Doing a little bit of pressure on the front. You then at some point, and we'll kind of move back, but UAE, are they going to help? Maybe Bora's going to come in because they need to start protecting Jai Hindley's place. So there's a lot of different factions going on here, and who's going to be able to help? Well, for some reason, Alpecin comes up. They start doing some work on the front. Then, Matthew Van der Poel is doing some work on the front. They go over the top of this climb. They're starting to bring things back just a little bit. He and Wout kind of push ahead on the downhill. And next thing you know, they're off in a break together. And it's they close it down. They go, the break is up 2:28 or so. They're like, I don't know, not quite bridging it, but they're 30 seconds or so above the peloton. But they're not really making much progress. There's a good climb. And that's when actually, Chris Nilsson takes off. Nealands takes off. Shaw had been doing a lot of work for him with Israel, and they go up this climb. I think this is the last Cat 3, and that's where Nils Chris makes his big move. And you're thinking, okay, well maybe Wout and Van der Poel will maybe be able to take something back at this point, but they weren't. They weren't making any progress. And Nealands took off. Look here, 32K to go. He's got just barely a bit of a gap, but he does extend that out. These two guys, finally, Van der Poel's like, what is going on? And he just sits up. And then Wout carries on for a little bit. And then next thing you know, he sits up. But here you go, back in the pack here. Remember, Kwiatkowski is up front, but the group is being challenged. Now, as soon as the break goes up the road with Nealands, Ineos gets on the front here because Kwiatkowski is no longer in that break, but he's still working. And then that break splits up and you get 2 separate breaks. You have, 3. You have Nealands up front. Then you have a group of 4 or 5. Then you have another group of 4 or 5 behind him. And at some point, they're all about 30 seconds behind each other. This is probably the worst situation that could have happened for Chris, because instead of these guys, there's the 4 here: Bilbao, Chavez, Pedrero, and what's the guy that got second today? Zimmerman, Georg Zimmerman. So the problem there is those guys were like, they didn't want to be caught from behind. Behind, you have Alaphilippe, Kwiatkowski. They can sprint. So this group here that is right behind Nealands at 38 seconds, you can see going over the top of the climb, they're incentivized to keep pushing themselves to try to bring back the lone leader and not screw around and attack, because they don't want to get caught with Alaphilippe and them behind. Alaphilippe, Kwiatkowski, they're all motivated because there's two groups up the road. There's the single rider, Nealons, and then in front of them is this group. And if they get this group, maybe they can get the next guy. So everybody is motivated. And the problem with that is they come over the top of the final climb, and then there's some descending, and then there's some flat and little lumps. So Chris everything is against him to be able to sustain this move and go out there, because the guys, how often do you see a group of 4 that are all totally committed, rotating through without a problem? Not always. Then you got another group of 4 behind that. They're just as motivated and doing the same thing. So everyone is just a collapse into themselves, into the lead rider, Chris Nealons. And it didn't really bode well for him. He does have this short little gap out there, but you can see with 3.2 to go, the group does catch him. Chavez takes off, then Pedredo does, then Georg with about 1 kilometer to go. And you know what? Like, my concern at this point is you're going to get the Alaphilippe group coming up. Alaphilippe, and I say concerned because I don't really care for Alaphilippe to win, or necessarily even Kwiatkowski. It is interesting, like I said, you had Kwiatkowski doing work in that group well, and then behind him is his team chasing. But I mean, the team chasing is not, they're not going to pull him back, but it's to sustain the gap or their positions on the top parts of the GC. We're not going to get him back, but we're going to kind of maintain this buffer. And all the big sprinting guys had been kicked out anyway. Caleb Ewan, Jakobsen were like early on. I mean, like within the first 3 kilometers, I think, of the stage today. Philipsen was there until like the last 40 or so, which was still odd because that's when Matthew Van der Poel was working things over. So you get Georg Zimmerman comes in here. He attacks with 1 kilometer to go. And immediately you see a bit of a split in the bunch where Pello Bilbao is able to jump up, start to bring him back. And then on his wheel, took a little bit more, was Ben O'Connor. And Ben O'Connor comes up to them. Now, he's still, I can't see the
7 minutes.
Let's take a look here. If it even says here, if you can see any yardage. I actually heard Bob Roll say 400 yards to the top. And I'm like, what is he, golfing? But when Pello Bilbao finally starts to sprint here, I can't see the yardage, or once again, the meters on the side of the road for how much is left in a sprint, because it would have been interesting to see if Ben O'Connor comes up to them and immediately goes through. Get your gap, get your momentum, try to use that to go through him. But instead, he sat on. Now, the most interesting part here is Pello Bilbao starts to sprint. Zimmerman starts to sprint. And I don't know if, let's go back just a fraction here. Zimmerman's on the front. Look at his pedaling. It looks perfectly fine. Then Pello Bilbao starts going here. And right there, Zimmerman puts it into, like, I don't know, the 11. Does he have a 10? But I don't know what he was doing. Whereas Pello Bilbao put it in a gear that he can gap immediately and then get on top of the gear and sprint. And it was a short sprint. It didn't look like it was full, even 200 meters to the line, which means he just needs to stay on top of that to continue himself. Whereas Zimmerman takes a long time to try to slog this thing out, and it looks painful, his sprinting. In the end, Pello Bilbao gets the win. Zimmerman holds off Ben O'Connor, and then I think Chris gets 4th, Esteban Chavez 5th, Antonio Pedredo gets 6th in there, and then Skilmos and Kwiatkowski come in. Warren Barguil, they're all 30 seconds back. And then Stuyven wins the stage for the big GC group. So I don't know if they were disappointed they were left out, but Soudal Quickstep still haven't got their win. And then there's your top there, no change. 17 seconds from Vingegaard to Pogacar, Hindley down 240. You do see Bilbao moves up, what they say, 6 places here. So he goes up into 5th at 434. And now it will be interesting to see, is he going to be somewhat like Jai Hindley, where Jai makes a big move, goes up. Now Jai's been holding his position quite well. Or is he going to be one of these guys that there was a reason why he was so far behind? But he only took 240 today. So it's not, it's not like he was, 240, is that what it is? 230, what was the amount here they took? 253. So he took almost 3 minutes to come on back. And, for the most part, it seemed like it was probably worth it. Now, it was worth it for the day because he got the win. He also, I'm going to go. This is the thing about Wout. He denies he's leaving the Tour de France. Bizarre day includes accidental late attack with Van der Poel. Rumors, Wout van Aert's imminent departure of this year's Tour de France, it turns out, were greatly exaggerated, but that didn't stop the whispers from gradually amplifying. Much of Tuesday, the race resumed after its first rest day. Van Aert, so the story went, was going all out for the win stage 10 as he was leaving the Tour immediately afterwards to attend the birth of his son. 2 and 2 began. That doesn't make sense. 2 and 2 began to add up to 5 in earnest once Matthias Skilmoth repeated the rumor for the benefit of the TV2 cameras before the start in Valencia. Jumbo-Visma moved quickly to deny the story, while Wout himself learned of the rumors via his radio. An hour or so before the finish, on reaching the Jumbo-Visma, he phoned home to confirm there had been no change in the expected post-tour due date. And by the time he had warmed down shortly afterwards, okay, so it sounds like they had this whole situation come to light. I mean, already planned to have birth after the tour, and he's like, "Oh crap! Did my father?" I don't know if he's a father yet. I wonder what you're going to ask. Van Aert quipped at the nod of reporters who kept vigil while he cooled down. I guess it's no news for you guys that my wife is pregnant again, and we expect a boy again. So he's already a father. I just did a quick call to my wife to check if she's all right, and luckily she's doing well. So I don't know where it's coming from, but I'm in the tour and hopefully for as long as possible. Sweet. I have no idea what that boy Skilmoth got from that. I've never spoken to him, but I'll ask him tomorrow. Maybe he wants me to go home, he joked. My team director informed me in the last part of the race, so it was a bit prepared for it. I was happy I could make the call, and it was just a rumor. Maybe there's some guys in the peloton that want me to go home. You don't just he doesn't get to go home just because you say he should go home, right? I mean, that's not really how it works. It's his decision, unless the decision of the manager or the teams, the jury, and he does something wrong. Brian, thank you. Wout is leaving so he can contest the next Alvis, right? Tucker. So here you go with the overall spread today. Let's go to the stage. We're at the stage. I do want to look here at the bottom because see if anybody. Nope, they all made the time cuts. Drevenins and all these 34 minutes. That's pretty good. 34 minutes as for how bad that day actually looked. Super hot. And there you go. Let's go to the GC. Like I said, Bilbao moves up 6 places. That's one of the better moves we've got here, up into the 5th place. That's gonna piss off the Adam Yates, Simon Yates, Pidcock, Gadu, Sepp Kuss, all those guys that he jumped over. I think he was already ahead of Sepp Kuss. So that's let me see, 3 minutes for. No, I think he was behind. So yeah, because these all Roman Bardet, all these guys went down. Duh. You just look at the arrows, and that's where you're able to do it. Points jersey doesn't change. KLOM, no one. Tobias Johannesson, I think he won some points today, so he does move up a bit. But other than that, Felix Gall didn't do anything. He hasn't done anything for quite some time since Nilson Palace took those points back. In the youth jersey is still with Pogacar. Teams with Bahrain. So the Gino Mater, that if you aren't aware, Gino Mater, their teammate Bahrain, dies in the Tour of Swiss. He's a Swiss citizen. He's in their race, and he has a tragic. I haven't watched. I can't find videos out there. Not that I've really looked, but I did find a crash picture of Magnus Sheffield, who also went down in that race. And he's down, long way down this mountainside. And they're trying, and that could have been part of the problem. It's like, you don't just crash and hit something. It's like you crash, you hit, and then you roll, and you're way down this mountainside. It's appeared to me. I haven't really checked out if that's the case. I haven't had anybody, because look, he just died. Do we need all the gory details? Kinda we do. Okay, so Bilbao puts in a lot of work to get up there today. Okay. Everyone else does some work, but is this going to be one of those situations where he then dramatically explodes coming up? Could be, because this is going to be a pretty tough week. I was extremely impressed with his interview, post-race interview. Sebastian Piquet puts the mic in front of him and usually asks some of the dumbest questions. Oh, you happy you won? Well, no shit, dude. But Bilbao, I thought he took the opportunity great, which is, look, not everyone is skilled at taking, how to conduct an interview or when you're being interviewed, and you're feeling like, oh, I'm being celebrated here. I'm just happy to be here, and you don't really have your thoughts. And then next thing you know, you answer a few quick questions, and then boom, your time's done, and you get spit out, and you're like, okay, that was my one chance to be in front of the camera. I got the feeling from Bilbao that he was like, look, it's my time here. I think he said he's been racing for 13 years as a pro. This is his first Tour de France win. He's like, I'm going to get my chance. I'm going to talk as much as I want. And then what he said was, I thought it was really good. One, you could tell English isn't his first language, but geez, he spoke better English than a lot of English speakers. Okay. So I loved how he described how the race played out for him and what the team had talked about the night before, and then how it played out and how he ended up winning and his thoughts there. He said kind of like just, cold-blooded killer type of thing. And then he also talked about the Gino Mater aspect, and I thought that was, and he just did a fabulous job. And I haven't really heard interviews with him much, so for that I was thoroughly impressed. So here's today's stage. Let's go tomorrow, Wednesday. Once again, I think this should be a break, or you may see Philipsen. You may see, I don't know if Van der Poel didn't blow himself out today. You may see the Alpecin Phoenix team actually try to take this. Because it's not, I mean, it looks lumpy, but they're Cat 4s. So those aren't high climbs. I mean, you got 3.9 at 4%. That shouldn't be any. 2.9 at 4.4. You got this other one, 1.9 at 4.9, and then 1.7 at 5.1 with still, 70, 60 or so kilometers to go. So these little pitches, I'm sure will be bad. Maybe you're looking at another Mads Pedersen if the break doesn't get away, and you're going to start seeing a lot of these same breakaway riders getting away, staying away, because they're the only ones that are really having the fitness. So you might start to see them recycled from the first time. The Jorgensens, Mike Woods, probably not yet, not strong enough for Mike Woods as far as the terrain doesn't quite go too deep for that. Otherwise, I think I wouldn't doubt if you see Alpecin do some work, and Mads Pedersen really came through. So him, or even Lotto Soudal, to try to keep things together, because you saw Stuyven today comes over the top. He is with them, right? Let's double check. Let's go to results. Make sure I'm not seeing things here. Stage today, Stuyven, Jasper Stuyven. No, he's with Little Trek. So Soudal had Alaphilippe. I think he used to be with them, but Stuyven is now with the Trek team. So, whoops, screwed you. Okay, so let's just keep going along here. This will be tomorrow, or sorry, this will be Thursday. And there's a few bigger climbs, and I could see trying to actually get Nilsen Palace in this group, because you're going to start getting Cat 2 climbs and more points, a little bit more. Maybe he'll be able to do that. And then Friday, you've got coming up to the Grand Colombier. That's going to be obviously big time stuff. Stage 14, the Jouplan, Col de Ramals, the Col de Fur, and the Col de Jean-Paz. So look, this Col Jouplan, I heard Horner talking about this. This is the one that he talked about it being in stage 16 of the 2006 Tour de France, where Floyd Landis gets up there, does an amazing ride. Or was it incredible ride, and wins the stage, and they go off the Jouplan, and it's a horrible. He said it's a very difficult climb. Now, there's more recollection to the Jouplan than that. There's a few other things, which is that's the one where Lance Armstrong, I think in his first Tour de France, he bonked heavily and had some food there from his teammates. So he still had teammates around him. That's one thing we're kind of talking about here, where you start to get Pogacar up the road, Vingegaard up the road, and they don't necessarily always have those teammates other than Wout. And this is the whole thing going back to stage 6 about the having your going up the road with a Wout rather than a Sepp Kuss. It's problematic. Point is, Lance was bonking up there, and he ends up saving himself on the Jouplan. I also think the Jouplan is where Dumoulin was training a few years ago and hurt his knee, and then had to end up not going out of the Tour that year. I think that was 2 or 3 years ago. He was doing a lot of training up there for some reason for the Tour. He was on the Jouplan, and he drove out there to do it. And then anyway, there's rumors about him and this, was he faking it or whatnot? But I believe that is the climb that they had for there. And then let's go stage 15. You got the Fourclos de Montemont. I don't know what that is. Cat 1, the Croix de Fur, Col de Aravels, and the Côte the Mont Blanc, Saint-Gervais, the Côte des Aramands. They could do the Col de Loze at some point as well. I'm trying to see which day that is. Col de la Loze. That is on stage 17. And remind me, help me out here if I'm wrong. Isn't that the one that where the year 2020 when Pogacar won, Sepp Kuss did set a blinding pace up there, They dropped Pogacar momentarily. I think and Lopez was up there. Superman, which he calls off, he put a little bit of a time gap, and that was Sepp Kuss that's kind of the one that they thought maybe they were going to try to put Sepp Kuss in. It's a really short path, but it looks like that goes up and then drop down. I'll do a little bit more research into that, and then we can find out. Okay, that's I think that's all we have for today. Anybody? Let's remove this here. Hope everybody enjoyed this. This is a little bit more disjointed for me, probably because it's a busy day. I'm going to try to do a ride. It's a little warm out here. John Novikov joins in. Nilsson looked like a tough day for him. What are his chances of holding the dots through the Paris? Fingers crossed. And thanks, Victor. Tony, thanks for live streaming. Yep, thanks, Victor. Victor sent me a mug, people. This is what you do when you love your shows. Thanks. Superman Lopez won up Col de Lodos. Okay, so I was right. So Nilsson Palace being able to hold on, I think he's expended too much energy to get the points he has got right already. He's done a great job doing that, but he's spent too much energy to get the actual points that he has had. And therefore, I don't think he's going to be able to hold on to it. Like I said, he needs to take a day like today back off. Probably should have ridden in with the sprinters. Take a day like that tomorrow, and then hit it on Thursday and start collecting those points when they matter, rather than just trying to be in all over the place. All right, everybody. Thanks. Like, subscribe. See you tomorrow.